Gerrymandering is named after a Massachusetts governor called Elbridge Gerry, elected in 1810. A map that he signed into law but didn't actually draw looked a little like a salamander, so the press combined his name and a salamander to make Gerrymander. Technically it should be Gerrymander with a hard G, but it sounds weird, so I'm sticking with a soft G. While the US is arguably the king of gerrymandering, it's not alone in its plight. South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia all have modern examples of gerrymandering, so it certainly is a significant and far-reaching issue. Focusing back on the states, we need to understand how redistricting, the drawing of the lines, happens. Every 10 years, the United States conducts a census, counting every person in the country. This information is then used to divide the people roughly evenly between the 435 congressional districts. Over the 10 years, populations can shift, so the maps often have to be redrawn. This is where the politicians step in, as the vast majority of states require the local elected government to draw the lines. In 2010, the Republican Party caught the Democrats with their pants down, with the realization of the true value of the less glamorous local elections. They pumped money into them, launched attack ads, and coordinated efforts to cause a landslide in the local governments, leaving the bulk of government under Republican control. This process was called Red Map, and the incredible story of it is told in the book Rat F***ed by David Daly. It's linked in the description. The end result of this has been a decade of Republican power, despite consistently getting fewer votes than the Democrats. The next redistricting cycle will kick off in December 2020, and only time will tell to see how it all plays out. The Democrats are less likely to be caught unaware, but the entrenchment of the current maps is so severe that it's a hell of a mountain to climb. So that was the big victory of Republican gerrymandering, but the Democrats are a long way from being innocent bystanders. Take Ed Pastor, a retired Democratic congressman. When interviewed after some positive election results in 2012, he was quoted as saying, "The maps performed like they were designed." He went on to comment about how they picked up the Hispanic vote in certain areas, and how they had removed Republican-leaning areas to allow for Democratic victories. So no one is innocent. The Republicans were just better at it. Whilst undertaking the research for this video and the main video, I had many moments of intrigue and concern, but the part that truly made me feel disgusted was how minority voters have been used. Voters are but pawns in US politics, and most of world politics too. I don't think many people will disagree with that, but minority voters are used even more so, all in the name of minority representation. The Voting Rights Act, as well as protecting the rights of minority voters, has been interpreted to allow for gerrymandering to increase the odds of a minority candidate to be elected. It is hard to argue that this is a negative thing. There have been studies that show people are more engaged with politics if the people that represent them look like them. It makes sense, really. It is of vital importance that minority groups, whether that is in terms of race, gender, class or whatever, are effectively and appropriately represented. It is an entirely necessary part of fighting against discrimination and increasing inclusiveness. It has, however, come at a price. That price starting with the Unholy Alliance. Southern Republicans partnered with African American Democratic candidates to pack African American voters into specific districts, all but ensuring the election of the African American candidates. This in turn allowed for the bleaching of the surrounding, now predominantly white districts, which made them comfortably Republican. Both the African American candidates and the Republican candidates benefit at the expense of the Democratic Party as a whole. To achieve vital minority representation, we have had to take a hit to the democratic process. How do you fix all of this? How do you remove the various thumbs from the scale of democracy? Some places appoint apparently neutral non-partisan committees. This sounds great, except for how it's not remotely easy to actually find a person who truly is neutral. Even if you do, the losing side will say that it isn't fair, and that the neutral party is a Trojan horse for the other side. Even in the most independent of commissions, there is often some form of political influence. Other ideas involve giving the maps to computers, programming them to design fair maps. Another idea that sounds perfectly reasonable. Of course, the company that designs this system will inevitably be said to be partisan, rightfully or wrongly. Secondly, what exactly is fair? Should districts be competitive? Should all districts be winnable by both sides? If you're in an area where 80% of people vote one way, Is it fair that the 20% could win the seat? How about the courts? With tenure, that being judges being lifelong appointees, there is an argument that political pressure can't be effectively placed on them. Of course, this isn't the magic bullet either. Judges are generally appointed by the ruling party, so in conservative years you get conservative judges, liberal years, liberal judges. So partisan leanings are not absent here. So, why can't the politicians sort this mess out? I don't think anyone sums it up quite as well as Mr. Paul Smith, the lawyer who argued an anti-gerrymandering case in the Supreme Court of the United States.
Do you see any impediment to Congress acting in this area?
Other than the fact that politicians are never going to fix gerrymandering, they like gerrymandering.
There is one solution that would defang gerrymandering: ditching the current first-past-the-post voting system. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail about voting systems. CGP Grey has done that many times better than I ever could, so that's linked below. Essentially, gerrymandering works because it uses votes for your candidates efficiently, and causes your opponents to use their votes inefficiently. It causes your opponents' votes to be wasted. But if you used a voting system where no vote was wasted, where it's not just a majority rules, then gerrymandering basically disappears. Districts would exist only for administration practicality. They would have no real-world significance. Of course, people have tried to change voting systems, but with limited success. The UK held a referendum in 2011 in regards to a change away from the first-past-the-post voting system, but it failed to gain traction. As to why that was the case, I think that's a topic for another video. If you liked the video, perhaps consider subscribing.